emergency renters assistance program for the city of Los Angeles. We are recording this presentation so that it's available for everyone who may have missed it or wants to hear it back again. The link for the presentation will be on the Zoom invitation link that we sent you all. So that's where you will find the recording of this presentation. Of course, it's not there right now. It will be there probably within an hour after the presentation ends today. So for a copy of the presentation, you'll be able to find it at that link that is located in the Zoom invitation link that we sent you the information for this presentation today. So thank you all for taking the time to join us today. I know there's a lot of questions regarding this program. Just a few reminders is we will have I will go over some common frequently asked questions towards the end of the presentations. We will actually open up the chat room at that time. We do not want to open it up yet as your questions may be answered throughout this presentation. So if you could just bear with me until we get towards the end. And if you still have a question, a general question, you should put it in the chat. But if you have a personal question regarding your particular application, then we will provide you information of how to contact us directly to get a response to your question. And then due to the high amount of participants in this webinar, we had over 1,000 people RSVP. I do want to let you know that we are offering this presentation throughout the whole month of September. So today and the 22nd, September 22nd, 2 weeks from now, Wednesday, we will also do this presentation again in English. And we will also hold this presentation in Spanish on September 15 and September 29th. So if anyone misses it or you want to refer any family or friends, those are the dates. And I'm sure everybody had received that email of when you signed up of the other dates that we will be presenting this exact presentation. So with that, I will begin. So as many of you may have known is that we opened this emergency renters assistance application back in March 15. It was open for those applicants that had applied to the former renters assistance program that was in 2020. That is when we were issuing a one-time payment of $2,000 to landlords and tenants. So those tenants that we weren't able to fund from that program, we actually gave them a head start to apply on March 15. And then for everyone else, we opened the application on March 30th. And the application was open for a month and it closed at midnight. Applicants were able to submit their application via phone or online 24/7. So we received over 70,000 emergency renters assistance applications from tenants. And then we also received over 43,000 from landlords. And based on those applications that we received, tenants had indicated that they had unpaid rent of over $500,000. And for this round of funding, we had only received $235.5 million. So as you could see, the funding was insufficient for the demand of unpaid rent for all the applications we received. So what we did within the last 2 weeks, we have notified all tenants, and there was 3 groups of tenants that we notified. So if you are somebody that applied for the city's emergency renters assistance, everyone should have received an email or a phone call if you did not provide us an email. So we have 3 groups of people we contacted. We contacted the applicants that we were unable to fund their application. So those people were referred to Housing is Key, which is the state program. The state of California's renters relief program is called Housing is Key. So if you receive that email, that means you could apply to the state program. Then we also emailed a bunch of applicants that we are currently processing their application. So that email said that we're currently processing your application. Please do not apply to the state until we have finished processing your application. So we sent a group of emails to that group of applicants. And then the final email and notification we sent was to both tenants and landlords who have already received payment from the city. And that is to inform tenants and landlords that if you still need financial assistance for the months that we were unable to pay, that you could apply now directly to the state's Housing is Key program. So if you did not receive an email or a phone call, what you want to do is go to our website and look up the status of your application. Now, if you were to go to our website right now, it's kind of slow, and that's because our system is working to upgrade it. I don't know if anyone knows this, but we used to be, or our name just recently changed. We used to be, well, back in the day, we're the Los Angeles Housing Department. And then in 2013, it changed to the Housing and Community Investment Department. And now we're back to the Los Angeles Housing Department. So we're changing our logo and we're changing our website address. So that's all happening right now. So you may experience delays when you go to our website. But to make things easier, if you type in this link right here, housing2.lacity.org, it will take you to our ERAP, our Emergency Renters Relief homepage. And we have a bunch of information on that page, including how to look up the status of your application. So if you scroll down to the page, you will see this button that says Status Lookup. When you click that button, you will be able to look up the status of your application by entering some fields. So when you go to that website, you will see this page, and here is where you will enter. And again, for landlords that may be on this webinar, you want to use the tenant's application number. Tenant application number, they have a prefix that begins with EN. So that is how you will look up an application, is using the tenant's application that has a prefix of EN. Landlord applications begin with LL, but you do not want to look up a landlord application with a LL. You want to look up the status of an application using the tenant's application number that begins with EN. So to look up the status of a tenant's application, you will enter the zip code of where the rental unit is. So you'll type in the zip code, and then you need to type one of the following here, whether it's the actual tenant application number that has the prefix EN, or the tenant's phone number, landlord's email address, or tenant's email address. And once you do that, once you click this button after you enter the information and you click check status, you will receive the status of your application. So here's just a mock-up one, what it would look like if you were to type in an application number. So here it says, this is the application number, EN. My status is refer to apply to housingiskey.com. This is the property address and the unit number. So if your status says refer to apply to housingiskey.com, that means your application was referred to the state and you could apply to the state. If your application is something else, and I'll go over those statuses in a bit, then you do not want to apply to the state yet, because we are still processing your application. So just to go over this status lookup, we have definitions here. So if your ERAP application status is something different, you could find the definition of what that status means by just scrolling down. And we have a status key right here. And these are the definitions right here on the left. I'm sorry, these are the statuses and these are the definitions on the right. So this is how you can tell what the status of your application is. And this is available. You do not need a password to access this screen. You just need to know your zip code and your application number. That would be the easiest way. Okay, so here are the statuses. So how do you know if you are eligible to apply to the state's program? And how do you know if the city is continuing to process your application? So besides the email notifications informing you, you can also look at this to see if you're eligible to apply to the state program. So if your status says refer to housingiskey.com, or your application is closed landlord paid or closed tenant paid, or maybe you never submitted an application to the city. You never received an application number that begins with EN. Then that means you are eligible to apply to the state's program. Okay. All others that are in the following statuses here, you cannot apply to the state program until we finish completing your application. And we also put this in the email. So it's very important that you do not. We've informed the state of those applications that we received, that we referred to them, and we also provided them a list of those that we are currently processing. And we'll be sending those lists, updated lists to the state so they know of any changes. So if your application is any of the below, tenant pending final submission of documents, tenant under review, landlord pending initial submission of documents, or landlord pending final submission of documents, landlord under review, landlord opt out, landlord and tenant under review, or payment eligibility under review, you do not apply to the state, as we are still processing your application and hope to fund your application very soon. Okay. So if you meet this criteria up here, you could apply directly to the state's Housing is Key program by visiting them at housingiskey.com. They are accepting applications by both tenants and landlords online. They are also, if you are unable to submit an application online, you could call their phone number. It is 833-430-2122. If you need assistance, you may not, be able to access a computer, or you may have difficulties uploading documents. Whatever it is, you want to call this phone number. They're available 7 days a week, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So it's pretty easy, right? All week, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And they're able to, they won't take your application over the phone, but they'll provide you resources of how you could receive assistance in submitting your application. Now, I know one of the common questions was, is that how come the city can't just give the state our application? Well, we tried to do that. Unfortunately, the city's application and the state's application is just not compatible. So the state is requiring that a new application be submitted to the state. So we were unable to transfer your application over. And as you may have noticed, that our application was much shorter. I think our application, if you printed it, it might have been like, I don't know, maybe 4 pages, and the state's about 40 pages. So there's a significant difference in the two applications. So they just weren't compatible. And, to apply to the state, even though you may have, uploaded your documents, you still have to complete a new application to apply to the state's program. So if you go to Housing is Key, this is what their website looks like, and this is where you will find the application to apply. So as you can see, they have different languages. So here's English and Spanish and some other languages available to submit your application. And the city and the state program are similar because it's the same, it's the same program really nationwide, but it is to pay unpaid rent beginning on April 1st, 2020. Also, the state will be paying for future rent, upcoming rent. So you could also apply just for future rent. And they are also providing utility assistance. So that was one of the elements that we could not provide, but that is something that the state will provide utility assistance for LA City residents who are unable to pay their water, trash, or internet bills after April 1st, 2020. Again, if we have paid and funded your application and you need additional assistance, you can apply now to the state's program. However, you cannot apply for the same unpaid rent that we already paid you for. And if you need a copy of the months that were covered that we paid, you can email us at hcidla.eras, ERAS, at lacity.org. Now, everyone that has been paid from the city program, we sent another email out yesterday to everyone, just to make sure, because we were receiving so many inquiries and phone calls that people needed another copy of that email to detail the months that we paid. So we just sent out a few thousand yesterday. So hopefully you received that email. Also, the city and the state program will only pay a maximum of 18 months of unpaid rent. So if we've already paid, and when I say we, I mean the city, when the city already funded your application and maybe paid for 15 months, that means that you could only apply for 3 more months to make it 18 with the state, because it's a total of 18 months of unpaid rent. So again, you know you're eligible to apply to the state's program if you have any of these statuses here. Refer to housingiskey.com, close landlord paid, close tenant paid, or you did not submit an application with the city at all. Okay. And to know if we are currently processing your application, you are in all these statuses. So that means you cannot apply to the state yet because we are currently working on your application, and you all should have received an email that we are doing so. So this is just to reiterate, we are still processing your application if your status is any of these 8. This is the main question, right? How long is it going to take? So these are our estimated timeframes as of today. So tenant pending final submission of documents. This means that a tenant is missing a document. We have sent you an email or a notification that you're missing something. So if you have not received that notification, then you could email us and we could tell you exactly what is missing. So this is all dependent on when the tenant provides that missing document. All the statuses that are under tenant under review, we hope to have this completed in the next week by September 15, unless further documents are needed from the tenant. So if an application is under tenant under review, this means that the account is locked. The tenant cannot access their portal. And if something is missing, then it goes back to tenant pending final submission of documents. Or if we review all of your documents, all of the tenant's documents, and everything is good to go, then we move it to the next step, which is landlord pending initial submission of documents. This status means that you are been approved, the tenant has been approved for the program, and that we have notified your landlord of the tenant's eligibility, and we're waiting for the landlord to respond. So usually it's in this status for about 3 weeks. But I do want to make a note here that sometimes tenants may have given us the wrong landlord email, or maybe they didn't give us the landlord's email at all. So it could still be under this status and mean the landlord has not been notified. So it really depends if the tenant provided us that information. But if we don't have it, if we don't have the landlord's email available, then we're making those calls to those landlords, because when a tenant completed the application, they had to give us either a landlord email or a landlord phone number. So that's what that status means. And then landlord pending final submission of documents. This means also that the tenant has been approved for the program. The landlord is willing to participate in the program, and they submitted documents. However, they're missing something. Something's not complete. So that's why it's at pending final submission of documents. So the status will change depending on when the landlord submits that missing document. The next stage is landlord under review. That's when a landlord has submitted all of their documents and it's under review to see if there's anything missing, or it's ready to move forward because everything is there. So if everything is there, then the status moves to landlord and tenant under review. So that's kind of like our last QA, quality assurance, doing a final review of both the tenant and landlord email to make sure, we've received the most updated rent ledger from the tenant and landlord. And sometimes this delays it because we do receive emails from tenants and landlords providing us updated rent ledgers to make sure we're paying the unpaid rent for the most recent month. So that varies. And then we have landlord opt out. What that means is that we notify the landlord that their tenant is eligible for the program. However, the landlord told us, or the landlord logged in and told us that they do not want to participate in the program. So if a landlord does not wish to participate in the program, then we will pay the tenant directly. And then the last stage after landlord and tenant under review is payment eligibility under review. So usually when your application is at this status, within 2 weeks, you'll receive an email that the payment has been sent to either your landlord or tenant. And this email will indicate what months is covered and how much the payment is for. Landlord opt out, I do want to bring up, and I guess I'll bring that up in the next, because we're going to go over the frequently asked questions that we receive. So let me just go to the next slide here. So here we go. So here are some FAQs that I think will hopefully address some of your questions you may have as you're listening to me speak. Why was my application referred to the state's program? Well, as I mentioned in the beginning, the city only had enough funding to cover the priority eligibility, right? So we received applications that unpaid rent was over 500 million, but we didn't receive that many. We only received 235.5 million. So we had decided to do a priority eligibility, which City Council approved, and that was to select applications whose household income was at 30% AMI, applicants unemployed for 90 days from the time of application and had unpaid rent. So most likely, if your application did not meet this criteria, then we did not process your application. we didn't even reach the household incomes that were over 30% AMI. So this is why your application was referred to the state, most likely. We did have some applicants, I believe, that were also referred because we didn't receive any response from you as well. But no worries, the state has made a commitment to make sure that anybody that had an application, a tenant or landlord application with us, that they would prioritize those applications. So we gave them, your information as, and I'll say information, I'll say your name and your rental unit address and your email. So that is how they know how to prioritize applications. The next question is, my landlord has opted out of the program. When will I be paid? I get this all the time. So we anticipate to pay all tenants directly by the end of next month. Ownership verification is underway to ensure the correct landlord has been contacted. So, we also have to make sure that we contacted the right landlord. So we are doing some property research on our own to make sure that the correct landlord indicated they didn't want to participate in the program. So I'll just leave that at that. I received an email that says, congratulations, your application for rental assistance with the City of Los Angeles is complete and approved. Does this mean my landlord has been paid? No, this does not mean your landlord has been paid. This means that your application has been approved and that your landlord has been or is in the process of being contacted. So I kind of mentioned this earlier. When it's under landlord pending initial submission of documents, if we had your landlord's email address, then they were sent an email. But if we did not, then we're making those phone calls to them to notify them of your eligibility. All right, next question. How do I know if my landlord was paid financial assistance for my unpaid rent? If your application has been funded by the city, the application status will indicate closed landlord paid or closed tenant paid. If your application is in this status, whether you're a tenant or a landlord, you should have received an email indicating that payment was in process, and it will indicate who the check was payable to or the method of payment that was sent, how much it was for, and what months of unpaid rent it covered. So again, as I mentioned earlier, we did send another duplicate email yesterday to all the tenants and landlords that have already been paid, just so that you had it handy when you apply to the state program, because I believe the state program also asked for this information. What happens if I only receive financial assistance for unpaid rent until March 2021? Will I receive additional assistance? So I just want to make it clear that any assistance that we provide is a one-time payment. So if you need additional assistance after we have already issued you a check or funds, you would have to apply directly to the state's program for any additional financial assistance that you will need. Again, you just can't apply for the same months that we've already paid you. And so it's pretty, I like that their website's pretty easy to remember, housingiskey.com. So that is where you would apply if you need additional assistance. And this is also, just not limited until March 2021. They're paying April, May, June, July, August, September 2021, and also prospective rent if you need it. My application was referred to the state's Housing is Key. What information was given to the state by the city? And so I mentioned this earlier, that we provided the applicant's name, rental unit address, and email address to prioritize city resident applications that were not processed by the city. We also did provide a list to the state of those tenants and landlords application that have also been funded. So that was another list we provided. And we also provided another list of those applications that are still that we're still processing and hope to fund very soon. So the state has received that information. Before I go to the next slide, I just wanted to make a quick announcement that we have, if you've ever joined any of our previous webinars, we always ask if you could kindly submit an evaluation for this webinar. So staff should be sending you that soon and it will pop up and hopefully you all could complete it. That would be greatly appreciated. And I think this is our final slide. We have additional frequently asked questions on our website. Actually, you'll have to use that email address since the website is kind of slow right now, and I don't believe they put the ERAP webpage back up. And I could just fix that right now. But there's frequently asked questions on our emergency renters assistance program that we may have not gone over today. But if you want to read those additional frequently asked questions, please visit our emergency renters assistance page because we have a bunch of information that is on there. Also, if you have any specific questions related to your application, you can email us at hcidla.eras@lacity.org, or we have the city's ERAP hotline available. Their phone number is 831-373-0587. And this is only for questions related to the city's application. So if you have an open application with us, we're still processing it, you have questions, then you want to make sure you call our hotline and email us at that email address. If you haven't received any of the emails that I have indicated earlier, and we are processing your application after you looked up the status, then you could email us at hcidla.eras and we will provide you a copy of that email. But I always want to make this note to everyone that you should check your spam folder. Most likely our email is just hidden there. And once you see that email address and you want to tell your email account, you want to push a button that says this is not spam so that you receive all future communications from us. And I think the email is something like do not reply at lacity.org. It's something like that. It's something where it says do not reply. So it's not specifically this email address listed here that emails you. It's from our system. So it says do not reply, and then it has the lacity.org. So that's how you'll know the email is from us. We're also receiving a lot of questions from tenants and landlords that are applying to the state program and asking us what's their update on their state application. And or they call the state's hotline and they haven't received a call back and they want us to find out for them. Well, unfortunately, we can't do that. So if you have a question related to the state's program or a question about an application that you submitted to the state, or you need assistance with completing an application to the state, then you want to call the state's ERAP hotline. And their hotline number is 831-430-2122. Now, I do want to say that the state started accepting City of LA resident application on September 1st. And since then, their call center and inquiries have increased dramatically. So I would ask for your patience during this time. I am told that there is a 72-hour callback. So if you left the message today or yesterday, they're not going to return your call right away. You need to wait a bit. If 72 hours have passed and they have not responded to you, then I would try calling back because it's really increased for them since they started to take on applications from City of LA tenants and landlords. And so how do you know if you have a state application? Because we also get a lot of inquiries where a tenant or landlord will say, this is my case number and it's 6 digits. I think it says case ID and there's 6 digits there. Well, that's a state application. So anything related to a state application, you want to make sure that you call this phone number and ask your questions there, as the city is not able to answer any questions related to the state application. We could only tell you what your actual status is with the current application that we are processing, or if we've already funded your application, we could tell you what months we paid for, but that's it. I also want to remind everyone that we do have a state moratorium on evictions, and everybody's really concerned that they need to be paid by September 30th. However, everyone should know, and I'm hoping that everybody on this call is a City of LA tenant or landlord, because the city does have an ordinance in place where a tenant cannot be evicted before the expiration of the city's emergency declaration. And so what this city ordinance does is it protects tenants that have unpaid rent due to COVID-19 until the end of the local emergency declaration. So as of today, there is no end of the local emergency declaration. So even though we have this state September 30th, city tenants are still protected if they're unable to pay rent due to reasons related to COVID-19. And if you have received an eviction notice and you do live in the city of Los Angeles, you could file a complaint with us so we can notify your landlord of the city ordinance by calling us at 866-557-7368. This is the housing department's hotline. And then any information or for more information regarding the state's moratorium and the city's ordinance, we have a dedicated page for both tenants and landlords to read about and to understand the difference between the two moratoriums. And you could find that at housing.lacity.org. And unfortunately, it's so long, /highlights/renter-protections. But again, we'll have this PowerPoint available for you to look at later in case you are unable to write this email down. Or actually, we will open up the chat right now. Since we have a few minutes, I'm hoping that I addressed everyone's question, but I know there's probably some more questions out there. And I know we may have some people on the telephone that may have called in. So Jeanette, are you able to open that chat for everyone to see if there's any other questions?
Yes, the chat is open. Also, we have some people with their raised hand for questions if you're open for that.
Okay, so let's go through. Okay, so let me just kind of go back and forth a little bit so we could address some people. I know we're not going to be able to get to everyone's questions since we have a large amount of people on this call. So let's see, let me try to scroll up. Okay, so some of the chat questions says, I received payment from your department. Should I give a receipt to the tenant? Yes, you should definitely give a receipt to the tenant. However, we emailed both the landlord and the tenant when we fund an application for emergency renters assistance, we send the same email to both the tenant and the landlord. But if the tenant did not receive it, it's probably a good idea to also give them a copy. Can two people on the same lease each apply for assistance separately? So I guess you're asking a question regarding the state's application, right? Because the city is no longer accepting applications, and that's why the state is now accepting applications from tenants and landlords. So similar to our program, if two people are on the same lease, then they have to, I believe they have to apply together because it's one tenancy. I know there are situations where people may live together, they don't know each other, and they pay rent differently and separately. So that may be a reason to apply separately. But again, I'd encourage you to call the state's hotline to get that question answered. Okay, you have a typo in the area code of the state hotline. The correct area code is 831. 831. Maybe it was in a prior slide. I could look. All right, thank you for that. There's a question on the Housing is Key website asking if tenants requested assistance for these months from another program. Should City of LA tenants that have been referred from the city to the state answer yes to this question? Yes, of course. You want to answer yes, and you want to provide them the months that we paid. I actually believe that they ask you to upload a copy of the email we sent you to show what months we covered. So yes, thank you for that question. Do you know if the state is going to follow the 30% AMI for city residents? Well, no, they're going to accept city of residents applications up to 80% AMI. So it's a much more broader housing income for you all to apply if you're 80% AMI and below. As a landlord, if it says we are under review and it has been more than 3 weeks, what do? We kindly ask for your patience as we are trying to finish processing all these applications. But that does mean that we did receive your documents and that it's in the queue to be reviewed soon. So I'd also ask you if you needed to update the tenant's unpaid rent ledger, you could email us so we could update it to make sure we've included the most recent month. And so what I mean by that is that, let's say when you uploaded your documents, it was, the last week of August or so, or mid-August, and it's still under review, and now your tenant hasn't paid their September rent. Well, if you provide us an updated rent ledger to show to include September 2021, we will include that in the payment. So what you want to do is email us at hcidla.eras@lacity.org. Please put the application number on the subject line saying updated rent ledger included, and we will upload it to your application to make sure that we pay all unpaid rent. My application just says application received. There's something else I need to do. Okay, so that must recently been an issue with our system, but if your application is received, I'm gonna have someone contact you just to make sure. So Brooke Forbes, so if somebody from my staff could actually chat her separately, that would be great. Let's see. Hi, I want to know application submitted pending for tenant. Okay, so this must be a landlord. This landlord says, my status says application submitted pending tenant for application number. What does this mean? So as I mentioned earlier, when you use our status lookup, you need to use the tenant's application number that starts with the prefix EN. Now, if your tenant, so we have a lot of landlords that applied, but their tenant never applied either. So when a landlord applied during the application period and they provided us their tenant's email or tenant's phone number, we contacted those tenants to let them know that their landlord has participated in this program and that now we need them to submit their portion of the application. Because this program, under the federal and state guidelines, is all based on the tenant's eligibility. So the tenant has to meet the program requirements in order for a landlord to be eligible, right? It's all based on the tenant's income and COVID impact, etc. So if your tenant did not apply to the city's program, then a landlord, you could apply to the state program again on behalf of your tenant, and they also do the same thing. When a landlord applies to the state program, they shoot an email out to the tenant telling them that their landlord has applied and that now the tenant needs to apply so that they could check their eligibility to see if they meet the program requirements. So Monica, if you just want to make sure that your tenant did not apply, please reach out to us by email and we will let you know. Please provide your landlord application number that starts with LL, and we will let you know if your tenant applied or not if you do not have that EN number. So thank you. For those of us that have used life savings to pay rent, is there going to be any relief? Well, as of now, the state and federal rules are that it has to be unpaid rent to the landlord. That is all that both programs can pay. So I know a lot of people may have borrowed money from credit cards or borrowed money from family or friends or did everything they could to pay their rent and they don't owe their landlord rent. Unfortunately, this program was created to pay a landlord directly any unpaid rent. The good thing is if you need prospective rent for assistance for future rent coming up, you could apply to the state and they will be issuing future rent. So I think I answered that question is what happens if my tenant is unwilling to cooperate with the program? Can a landlord proceed? What are the options? No, unfortunately, the way this program was created by the government is that it's all based on the tenant's eligibility, their income, their COVID impact, things like that. So there's really nothing more a landlord could do if their tenant does not participate, right? Because also a tenant has to meet the income limit. So that is just how the program was created. How do we estimate upcoming utility bills? So that's a question for the state, since the city never offered to pay unpaid utility payments. So I would direct you to please contact the state's ERAP hotline to answer that question. All right, so let's answer some questions on the hands raised. Jeanette, can you, I don't know if you're keeping track of who raised their hand first, but maybe you could just go from there.
Yes. So first is a 18 number ending in 459.
Did we unmute them?
Yes, I'm asking him to unmute, but it doesn't seem that he's responding. We can move to the next person.
Okay.
Vernon Nickerson. Please unmute. You're being asked to unmute.
Okay, let's move on.
Glenn.
Oh, hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we could. Hi,
Oh,
Glenn.
sorry about that. I think you answered my question about the reason about the rent in the future that won't be able to be paid. But I think you only answer for the city, right, on their application, not the state.
Right, so the state will pay for future rent.
Okay, so that's a question I have to ask the state.
No, they will pay for future rent. So when you complete the application, I believe it has it there where you could indicate that.
Okay, yeah, just by checking the dates in the future, I think it's there. Okay, I think I've seen that. Okay, great.
Great,
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Next is Victor Somotun.
Hello?
Hi, Victor.
Hi.
Did you have a
What
question?
was your question? No, I don't, but I've been following up with the meeting.
Okay, great. We just had your hand raised, so that's why we thought you had a question.
No, no.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, as Jeanette picks someone else, I just want to read this chat. Somebody said if the city had 2.5 million in funds and applications total 500,000, not certain how you ran out of funds. No, so the city had $250.5 million and we had received applications of $500 million in unpaid rent. So all the money we have is allocated to those applications that we are currently processing. So I just wanted to make that clear. It wasn't 500,000, it was 500 million.
Next is Jeanette Derbyshire.
Hi, if you can hear me, I have a tenant that has moved out, but their application is still open. So we'll still be able to receive those funds, correct?
That is correct. The program rules changed the end of June, beginning of July, that indicated that we can still fund landlords whose tenants may have already moved, but still have unpaid rent. So that is correct.
Okay, if they're getting just the 80%, that 20% difference, can then we go and apply for that difference with the state?
The city is paying 100%.
Oh,
of
100.
unpaid rent.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, and I just want to show you guys, sorry, I did have the hotline numbers incorrect. I don't know where I got 831, but it's 833 is the area code for both the city's ERAP hotline and the state's ERAP hotline. So thank you guys for pointing that out.
Next is Carol R. Katie.
Okay, wait, no, it's Carol. I've been trying to talk to somebody for a year and a half. Initially, I applied for the ERAP program, and they told me to send my my checking account information. I sent it, then they said, oops, you took too long. You were half a day late and we ran out of funds. So then I applied for ERAP. Now you change your name, ERAP. And every time I check the status, it says it's still pending. My tenant has completed his app. I completed my app. I'm a mom and pop landlord. I have one duplex in the city of LA. Landlords that have hundreds of properties with hundreds of apartments have been paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I can't even get 4 months worth of rent. In the interim, HCIDLA has sent me another statement saying you need to pay more money for HCIDLA for rent control. So I'm upset, I'm frustrated. I'm not getting any help from your department, and we get mixed information. Every time I check on the status of my app, they said they don't know what's happening. So can you answer any of those questions?
Well, without knowing and looking up your application, if it's under landlord under review, is that the status it's at right now?
No.
What is it at?
It says that they said that they have to do something on their end to complete the app. Somebody at HCIDLA needs to push a button, and they don't seem to know how to push the button.
Okay, so I'm going to have one of my staff contact you directly so we could actually find out what's the status of your application, because without knowing your application number and able to look on it, I can't really answer.
Do you have my telephone number?
I'll have one of my city staff that's on here contact you directly by chat right now, and then you could give them your information, because you don't want to give everybody information.
What about the people that have multiple buildings that get paid all this money and simple mom and pops haven't got anything?
We have paid mom and pops, and we paid a variety of landlords. There's not one particular landlord we're targeting and paying. So
And what about
I just thank you for your patience during this time, and somebody will reach out to you so we could better address your application.
Thank you.
Next is Katie.
Yes.
Hi, Katie.
Hi. Yeah, I have a full question. Let me make it quick. When I referred to this housing is the key, LA City representative told me that I'm under 25 of AMI, and that doesn't mean it's a guaranteed to get assistance. Is that correct?
No, so as I mentioned earlier, if you originally had an application submitted with us, meaning you had an application number that begins or prefix that begins with EN,
Yes.
we gave the state your information so that they prioritize their application. So it could be that their hotline doesn't know that, right? Because we don't inform their hotline. It's the people that are processing the applications.
So still not guaranteed to get rent, even though I'm under 25% of AMI.
They are prioritizing LA City tenants and landlords, so you should be receiving funding.
Okay. Can landlord charge month-to-month fee on top of rent? That I'm not sure.
What do you mean month-to-month fees?
Okay, I was like a few times I was ready to move out. I didn't want to have that. And I lost my income. I paid from my saving that I was like, I gotta make a living. I can't really do that. But I didn't sign the lease. So they adding 10% of a month-to-month fee. I don't know if it's okay. I mean, they
So
can.
Katie, since your question is not related to this program, can you please call us at this phone number 866-557-7368 so we could answer your question?
Okay, one
Thank
more
you.
question. One more question, please. If under any situation, I'm living in LA City, I cannot get evicted. Is that correct?
That's correct. There is a city ordinance in place that protects tenants who are unable to pay their rent due to COVID-19.
Okay, so month-to-month fees, let me clear with this. You guys.
No, Katie, I don't want to talk about the
okay.
fees right now, okay? You
Okay.
could please call our hotline and we'll be able to help you there. Thank
But
you.
they cannot.
Now is Angelina Alvarado.
Hi there. Yes, thank you so much for taking me quickly. I got to get back into work. I have some very straightforward questions. The first one is, my landlord also charges utilities. And they're completely separate from the utilities that I'll be applying for, like for DWP. Can I include that in my prospective assistance application? Because I have almost like it's close to $1,000 in utilities that they charge for the building. And I was just wondering if that should also be included in my application when I'm applying for my rent for perspective.
So unpaid rent includes utilities that you pay directly to your landlord, since that's kind of considered rent. When we talk about the state utility program, that means that they're going to pay directly to DWP.
Okay, and then are those two separate applications or do they all go into one application?
Again, I've seen the state application, but you're gonna have to ask the state that, but I believe it's all in one application.
Okay, so then that leads me to my next question. The last time I checked, and this is, again, I'm a tenant who going forward, I've paid all this time, but as it's turning out, I won't be able to pay my rent going forward. As I've exhausted all my options. So with that said, will I, oh crap, I just drew a blank. I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. As far as my location goes, I called in and the person said that my location is Los Angeles County and not the state. But and that was like maybe a month and a half ago. Is it my understanding now through this that everything is going through the state still, or is that how?
Okay, so let me correct you on that. So the state has always been accepting application from county residents. Now, when I say LA County residents, those are residents that do not live in the city of Los Angeles. So starting on September 1st, now LA City residents can now apply to the state program.
Okay, and that's all through the key housing.
Housing is key.
I wrote it down. I wrote it down on another.
Yeah, so people are chatting us too. How do I apply to the state? So here is the website, housingiskey.com. housingiskey.com, or if you had an application with us and we referred you to the state, we provided the website as well. Or if you do not have access to a computer, this is the state's hotline to call. Again, I really want to focus on questions related to the city's program and not the state's program. So if you could please address, if your questions could be related to the city's program, that would be great.
Next is iPhone.
Is there more than one person with iPhone?
Yes, there's 2 iPhones.
All right, let's move on, Jeanette.
Yes, I'm gonna move down to Sam.
All right, I'm going to answer a chat question since we're still trying to find some more people on the phone. Somebody is asking, I applied for utility assistance and have since found out about future rent. Do I need to send a second application? So you are referring to the state's application. So if you could modify your application with the state, I don't know. So you really need to call the state to find out information regarding their program and modifying it. So please call the state for any of the state-related application questions. Yeah, a lot of these questions are regarding the state, regarding utilities. I think somebody just says, how does it work for previous utilities with the state? As I mentioned earlier in the slide, they will pay utilities as of April 2020. But any other questions you need to really direct to the state. Will city applications be open again? Or will new rental assistance applicants only have the opportunity to apply to the state funding? No, we are not going to open our application again. And that is why we are working with the state for them to accept City of LA tenant and landlord applications. So again, if you have never applied to the city's program and you need assistance with unpaid rent or utilities, and you live in the city of Los Angeles, or if you even live in the county, or you live anywhere in the state of California, you could apply to the state's Housing is Key program. But do not apply there if we are currently processing your application. Thank you.
Next is Vanessa Pineda. All right, Michelle.
You don't really want to take those? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, my questions are state related and I know you didn't want to hear those. I had already received some payment, but it's not in full. So do I need to reapply or?
Yeah, you need to call them. I know that they will continue to fund applications as long as it doesn't exceed the 18 months. So you just need to find out how to do so.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Somebody asked too, what's the first step to applying? Again, you want to apply to the state's program at housingiskey.com. That is your first step. That is the application. If you do not have a computer, then please call the hotline that you see on the screen. Somebody just asked, my status says closed, landlord paid. We have not received an email or a check. What should we do as a landlord? So when you get that emailed, closed, landlord paid, I'm sorry, you did not get the email. So please email us at hcidla.eras@lacity.org so we could send you a copy of that email. Again, please check your spam folder as it may be there. Because if you participated as a landlord, we've been in communication for a while now. So you should have received that email. But if you didn't, the date of that email is when the payment, usually the payment goes out the next day. So it all depends when that email was sent to you. So usually, with the mail and the holiday, I've heard landlords and tenants receiving payment within 5 days to at least like 2.5 weeks. Again, it all depends where we live and how the mail is in the area. But again, Jonathan, if you could email us at hcidla.eras@lacity.org on the subject line, if you could put the application number, we will send you a copy of that email.
Next is Alicia. Jalda Mahiri.
Hi, this is Yalda. My question is, there is a question on application that it says that are you about evacuating your tenant? What should I answer to that question? Is it a yes or no to be eligible to participate in the program?
Is that a state question?
It's on the website that you mentioned, housing.
Yeah, so you need to call the state and ask them. I can't answer those questions for an application I do not have control of.
Oh, okay. But like generally, as you said, is that there is no evacuation, there is a no end date, right? So the answer to that question should be no to participate in the program.
What was the question again? Say it again.
The question says, are you about evacuating your tenant? Yes or no?
Does it say, are you evicting your tenant?
Yes.
Well, are you?
No, I mean, I don't know if you are, I mean, if they don't pay the rent, it's been more than 14 months. So, I mean, like what, yeah.
You're a landlord, right?
Yeah, if I don't get any help, then what's the point of having the apartment like rented?
Well, if your tenant lives in the city of Los Angeles, you're not supposed to evict your tenant. So that question is really for you to answer. I can't answer that question for you.
Okay. If the program says that I'm gonna get some help, then I mean, I think that was I was about asking, like, what if I'm gonna be eligible to get any help?
Well, again, like I mentioned, this program is based on the tenants information. So even if a landlord submits an application and the tenant doesn't respond, or maybe the tenant doesn't meet the criteria, then unfortunately the application will not move forward without the tenant's information. So I just want to put that out there again. It's all based on the tenant's income, COVID impact, stuff like that.
Next is Wilson.
Hi, sorry, I was trying to find the mute. Hi, thank you so much for doing this. My question was, what's the name of that LA City ordinance that you were talking about where you can't evict after September 30th?
I should have the number, but if you go to this link right here, housing.lacity.org, or if you go to our main website page and you click on renters protections, it's all the ordinances are there.
And is that where I would stay updated to see when this LA City ordinance like stops?
Yes, we update it.
And also, just one last question. I used a different email that I used from the city to the state. So will that delay the application when I do it on the state? I know
they also have your rental unit address and name.
Okay, that's all the same.
Okay. Here's a question that somebody asked. Landlord wants to know if every tenant, regardless of income, qualifies. The answer is no. There's income limits, right? So it's 80% of AMI. And I believe when you apply to the state, you enter your household income, and it tells you if you meet the household income limits. And then the second part of that question says, do you reimburse 100% of rent? So both the city and the state program are paying 100% of the unpaid rent. So initially, when this program started, it was based on the California Senate Bill 91 that indicated that we could only pay landlords 80% of the unpaid rent, and then landlords had to waive the additional 20%. However, Assembly Bill 832 was passed and they changed that. And it says now the city and state have to pay landlords 100%. Landlords no longer have to waive that 20%. So we pay landlords 100% of unpaid rent. If landlords do not respond to us after we notify them of their tenant's eligibility, and again, I do want to make this clear because I don't think I mentioned it, but we have to contact the landlord several times before we could just pay a tenant directly. So we are working to contact landlords by email, by phone, and if we don't receive a response back, then we will pay the tenant 100% of the unpaid rent directly to the tenant.
Lisa Mardoyan.
Oh, hello. Thank you. Some of my questions got answered already, but I had a quick question. So from what I understand, I'm in LA City, but I can no longer apply, so I have to go to the state. Like everybody else, I am on unemployment for a year now, but I use those funds to pay rent. And I guess you guys answered this, like the state now can, because unemployment stopped this week. So moving forward, they can pay rent for the coming months. However, I also was residing somewhere else during the pandemic. So July and August of 2020, I couldn't pay rent for that. So do you guys know if those are separate applications or
when you apply to the state, it's one application with everything that you owe. So if you apply to the state program, it will ask you questions of how much unpaid rent you have and any utility arrears. All right, so I see a question on the chat. It says, my tenant received an email that says, congratulations, you've been approved, but the application is still under review. Is that normal? Yes, that's normal. We did send some emails to landlords as well, not all, but that's why we have the status lookup. But really what that means, and I went over that frequently asked question, and I'll just show it again really quick since it's been asked. It means that the tenant is approved for the program, but now we're waiting for the landlord to respond so we could tell if a landlord wants to participate in the program and pay them directly. Otherwise, if they don't, then we will pay the tenant directly. And I'm so sorry. I mean, it looks like there are over 360 questions in the chat. Some of them I've gone over already. And that's why I did not want to open the chat earlier, because as you present, you start answering these questions. So a lot of them are, can we submit an application today? Yes, you can submit an application to the state if you do not have a current application open with the city. If you do not have an application that we are currently processing, then please apply to the state at housingiskey.com.
Marcela, I see a question on the chat about duplicate rent amounts or months. If they can apply to the state for a duplicated month.
No, you cannot apply for the same month. So let's see, any other, let me see, what time is it? Okay, how about, we have 3 minutes. Let's do it that way.
Okay, so you want to take the next person?
Sure.
Jeremy Martin. Jeremy.
Actually, we'll do the rest of these people here.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi. Hi. My question is, initially, back a while, I applied with Housing is Key. I live in San Pedro, California.
Okay.
And they told me I applied to the wrong program because of my location, and I needed to apply with LA. So when I went to apply with LA had just closed 2 days. When they sent me my notification, and they sent me the notification denied, and it says option B.
Yeah, so prior to if you applied prior to September 1st to the state, they denied your application because the city was processing applications.
Now, this was back some months ago now.
Okay, so now, as of September 1st, if you do not have an open application with the city, you can now apply directly to the state and they will accept your application.
That's what I need to know.
Okay.
And so that option B does that mean anything?
Yes, option B means that the city of LA chose to run their own program, and that is why you were unable to apply to the state's program. But the city has now changed that, and so now the city is working with the state so that the state will accept applications from both tenants and landlords.
Yes. I just want to clarify that because I've did it a few times and it takes quite a bit of energy to get this process.
No problem.
Okay.
Okay, have a good one. Okay, so this next question says, if the payment from the city takes longer than September 30th, what happens? Can I still apply to Housing is Key after September 30th, once LA ERAP is completed? So again, as I mentioned, there is a city ordinance in place that a landlord cannot evict for unpaid rent, but you cannot apply to the state. You cannot apply to the state until we finish completing your application. If you have an application on file with us, that's also another protection you have under Assembly Bill 832, that a landlord should not evict if you have an emergency renters relief program on file. Okay, somebody said, without knowing, I applied through Housing is Key of the city of LA. Do I submit a new application through Housing is Key? So I guess the question is, do you have an application that's currently in process with the city? If yes, no, you should not apply again to the state. But if you do not, then you should apply to the state. Or find out what the status of your application with the state is, since you indicated you initially applied. Okay, next caller, Jeanette.
Yes, is Kyra Parser?
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi. So I don't know, thank you guys for doing this. So do the utility companies, is there any sort of moratorium on them? Like I have back pay for them as well, and I'm getting a lot of notices as of lately. Like I haven't paid my utilities. It's been like rent or utilities, but I'm getting to get to the point where I can't pay both. And so, yeah, I'm gonna apply to the state, but I'm just curious about the utilities. Do you know, is there any sort, can they cut them off?
I believe they cannot. I believe the mayor Garcetti indicated to the DWP that they cannot cut off utilities.
Okay, and then, okay, so the other question is I owed taxes, so I did not, I'm a little concerned about applying. I know this is the state question now because I haven't applied with you guys. I need to apply with the state. But I just at all, do you know, are they requesting the tax information or?
Yes, they are requiring income information.
So what happens? Okay, I guess I'll have to contact them and find out because I'm sure you don't want to be bogged down with that. Okay,
Yes.
and then let's see, wait. So the utilities. Now, what if will they pay just utilities? I mean, I'm getting to the point where I can't pay my rent anymore either, but
The state program will pay both unpaid rent and unpaid utilities and future rent. All right, I have a question here. This is a good one somebody brought up because we haven't discussed it. And it says, we received an email to apply for rental assistance to Neighborly Software. Do you know anything about them? Yes, Neighborly Software is the state's program. So when we gave the state your information that we were referring your application to the state, they also sent an email out to you to apply to them as well. And the software they use is Neighborly. So if you have received an email or you log on to somewhere and it shows Neighborly Software, that is part of the state of California's renters relief program. Next caller.
067556. All right. Munir Richie.
Yes, hi.
Hello, can we help you? What's your question?
Yes, you know, I mean, I paid all the 25%, and then some months I pay 50% up till September. Now, my landlord is always saying he's been nice after the program ends, which he thinks end of September, he's gonna start the eviction. Now, do we need to pay the 25% after September, or what's going on? And how do I convince him that, you know, the program's still on? And then I applied, you know, I was invited for this state. I applied September 1st.
Oh, great. So yes, you should tell your landlord, if you go to our website and show them the information regarding the city ordinance in place regarding tenant protections of not being evicted due to the emergency order.
All right, next person is Shelly Walter.
Let me ask this question real quick. Somebody in the chat said, tenant has moved out, but still owes a lot of money. We have the application in process with the city. Will we still get paid? And can we apply to the state for the 20% difference? Again, we are paying 100% of unpaid rent. Okay, so if you have an application with us and your tenant has been qualified, and maybe they moved out after they're qualified, but you have participated in the program and the tenant moved out, we are going to pay you 100% of the unpaid rent. So there is no need for you to apply to the state for 20%. All right, next caller, sorry.
067556.
Yes, hi. My question is, I have tenants who were approved for the rental assistance that have separate parking agreements. When I put in the application as a landlord and they put in the application, they did not include the fees that they pay for parking. My question is, when they do the application for the state, should they include the fees that they have for parking that have not been paid?
Yes.
Okay. So the state program does cover parking fees as well.
Yes, it's unpaid rent. So, I mean, parking, it's parking rent, basically.
Okay, thank you for your assistance.
Okay, next is Joel.
So, hello? Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, what's your question?
Okay. Got a question. So if the tenant is not responding, the landlord didn't respond or anything, can we file for an eviction?
If the tenant didn't respond and the landlord didn't respond?
Yes, for the application. Let's say the landlord didn't respond to submit an application on behalf of the tenant. The tenant hasn't even come to the office at all, and they owe around $60,000. Can we file for an eviction?
Does the tenant have an application filed with us?
No. Nothing. Like He
Well,
also
as I,
he doesn't
as
have
I
a-
mentioned, there's a city ordinance that, okay, so I don't want to get into that. I want to really talk about questions regarding this program and not eviction.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
I meant, and please visit our website that has all the information you need to know about the city ordinance regarding eviction.
Since mini boot 12,
And you should only pick callers that have been in the queue. So I think we have like two
Yes.
more.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for this webinar. I just had a couple of questions regarding, first of all, I have applied to the city. I've been referred to the state. That's my current status. Although I do meet the parameters for having been under the 30% AMI as well as the 90 days of unemployment. So will that be considered? Is there anybody that can assist me with disputing that fact?
You need to call the state's hotline to get your question answered.
To get my question answered about the city's application?
You said you had I thought you said you had a state application you filed. It was referred to the
No.
state.
I filed with you guys.
Uh-huh.
I also received rental assistance in 2020. My application with the city says refer to the state, although I believe it was done incorrectly because I meet the parameters that you specified earlier about being under 30% AMI.
So we didn't, okay, so as I mentioned, most of the applicants that we selected met those priority eligibility. So some applications were still referred to the state if they met that priority eligibility, but documents were missing or the time frame had expired. So if your application status says referred to housingiskey.com, well, now you need to apply to the state program.
Marcela, when you say to pick the people on the queue, I see 33 people, so I don't know who these two people.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, well, let's pick 3 more. I mean, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get to everyone, or we'll probably be here till midnight. I see about a lot of questions. So again, if you have specific questions regarding your application that we did not answer today, you could email us, but please go to our website and please read the frequently asked questions on there. And also for any state related application questions, you really need to call the state's hotline to assist you. I see a lot of messages asking for, can you please help me complete the state application? Can I apply to the state? Again, you could apply to the state if we are not processing your application, or if you never applied to our program, apply to the state and you need to call the state. So again, here is their phone number to apply to the state. Any questions related to the state need to really be directed to the state, unfortunately. Okay, well, in the interest of time, let's take the next 2 callers, Jeanette.
Sonovia?
Yes, hi. I have a question. So I applied, I believe, I don't think this is a state question, but if it is, please stop me. But I applied and I did receive the neighborhood email. So if I receive that
program.
Okay, so if I receive that email, I cannot apply for the city.
Okay, so the city is no longer accepting new applications, right?
Okay.
So most likely you received that email because you probably had an application filed with us and then we were unable to process your application. So we referred it to the state.
Okay.
And now your status says referred to housingiskey.com. And so after we gave the state the tenant's information and landlord's information for those applications that we did not process, they also followed up with an email directly to the tenant to apply, and they used the software Neighborly.
Okay. And do you know how long the landlord has to respond back?
Well, okay, so the rules say that we have to contact the landlord several times before we could issue payment directly to the tenant. And the landlord, the state has the same rules. So it really depends. And so what I've seen is sometimes we have wrong email addresses from landlords, or maybe they were spelled incorrectly, or maybe there's a new landlord, or there's a new manager, or there's a new management company. So it really all depends, but that's what we have to do, the city and the state, is we have to contact the landlord several times before we could issue payment directly to the tenant.
All right, last person, Kervin Boyard.
Hello,
Hello, what's your question?
can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hey, how you guys doing? Thank you so much for taking me. So I just applied while you guys.
I'm sorry, you're getting cut off.
I was in the LA City area. So I'm just wondering, my landlord is charging a $100 late fee for the rent. So so I'm just, my question is basically is, I've been paying the 25% off every month. So I finished the application, but I heard you guys mention that, you know, for future rent, you will have the opportunity when you do the application. I didn't see that section when I was finishing the application for future rent because I'm still unemployed and I just had a hernia surgery. I cannot even be looking for a job at the moment. So I just want to know.
So again, it's a state application, so you really need to ask. I thought it would be on there. I can't remember. I know I've seen the application. It's been, weeks ago, but you should contact the state about prospective rent, if that's your question. Also, I just want to address, there's a lot of chats about saying their application was denied by the state. So I do want to make it clear that if you applied before September 1st, 2021, which was last week, your application would have been denied by the state. So you should not be denied if you have applied to the state's Housing is Key on or after September 1st, 2021. Because the state, we did not partnership with the state until September 1st for them to start accepting application from LA City tenants and landlords. I want to thank you all for taking the time today to attend this webinar. I'm so sorry that we are unable to answer the rest of the questions that I see in the chat. A lot of them we've already answered them. But again, if you have a specific situation regarding your city application only, you could email us. Otherwise, we'll be holding this webinar again in English on September 22nd. So you could RSVP the same way you did when you signed up for today. Or if you have any neighbors or families that want to hear this presentation in Spanish, please have them sign up for September 15th and the 29th, as we will do this all over again in Spanish and all over again in English. Thank you for your time and have a good evening. Bye-bye.